Hey there, Internet friends. Welcome to another episode of That Nerdy Site Show, a weekly podcast where the team members from That Nerdy Site get together to talk about our lives and all of the nerdy things we love about them. I'm your host, Trevor Starkey, and unfortunately, I am running solo this week. I was supposed to be recording with Cameron Abbott today, but he reached out this morning and basically said he was under the weather, so kind of coming in at the last minute here. I'm just kind of going to do a brief, here's what I've been up to these days. So if you do like what you hear, please remember you can always like, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast everywhere you can. And if you're feeling extra generous, you can always support us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. So yeah, diving into kind of what I've been up to this week. The big thing is I've been sitting on a new computer for a couple months now, and I finally took the time this weekend to get it set up and configured and everything. And with that new computer, has high quality gaming tech and stuff in it. It was something I bought from NZXT, so didn't build my own or anything, but I had I relied on them to build a quality one for me. And so I, in addition to getting all of the podcast equipment and software and stuff downloaded onto the new system, I took a look at Microsoft Game Pass. And in particular, I was spending some time with my parents, or my mom, the other day, and telling her my dad is nearing retirement now, and she's kind of like, what's he going to do when it comes to retirement? And I was like, well, Microsoft Flight Simulator came out with a new, very, very advanced version this year. I don't know if his computer or anything can run it, but it might be something worth looking into, because growing up, my sister and I, every year for like my dad's birthday / Christmas, because he kind of has one of those birthdays that falls like right around Christmas. For one of those holidays, we would always get him the latest Microsoft Flight Simulator, because my family comes from like a family of pilots. My grandfather owned his own plane. I learned how to fly in that plane when I was 10. That was kind of like my 10th birthday gift. Was we went up and did flying lessons and stuff. A little small, like Cessna or Mooney, I think a Mooney plane. But yeah, my dad has been working for the last number of years as like an airplane mechanic after many years as a pilot himself. And even my mom was a pilot, kind of because it just kind of came from the family, because it was her father is the grandfather with the plane. So yeah, we just are a family of pilots and stuff. And so Microsoft Flight Simulator was the kind of like cool thing to get my dad every year, as he was borderline into gaming. And I remember he would, like, on our Windows 95 computer and stuff, he would fly around Chicago and show us like what all the instruments meant on the like the dashboard effectively, and he would kind of show off the landmarks in Chicago in 1995 graphics, or we'd go to New York or whatever, and he would just kind of be like, oh yep, there's the Sears Tower, or there's Empire State Building, obviously, and all that kind of stuff. And so it was just kind of, that was one of our little family traditions, more or less, was kind of getting my dad Microsoft Flight Simulator. So I showed my mom the other day when I was over hanging out with her, kind of the latest like trailers and stuff for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 here, and how they're using the satellite technology to really get in there. And so when I got my new computer all set up, I sat down, went to Microsoft Game Pass, because I've been paying for that subscription for a little while now, and I downloaded it on my PC, and it took a couple hours, because it's like, okay, here's the initial 20 gigabyte install or whatever, and then it opens up the game. It's like, just kidding. Here you have, if you want to actually play, you have to download like the other 120 gigabytes of content or whatever. So I was like, all right, well, cool. So I downloaded that, and like watched some TV and stuff while I was waiting. But when I hopped in, first thing I did was I hopped into kind of the tutorial flights, and this was another like surreal moment, because the tutorial flights in the game, or at least for me, I assume this is the same for everybody, but at least for me, took place in Sedona, Arizona, which is pretty much where I learned to fly. My like I said, when I was 10, my grandfather took me, and my mom went with us and stuff, and we went, we would like leave Scottsdale Airport here, small little airport, not Sky Harbor, But we would leave Scottsdale Airport and we would fly up to Sedona for like lunches and stuff like that. On the weekends, and so yeah, I learned to fly over the Red Rocks of Sedona, or we'd go up to Flagstaff or something like that. So just quick like little hour long flights up there, I guess. And so to be learning again how to fly over the Red Rocks of Sedona and stuff, I was like, this is surreal, and takes me back a little bit. And then I didn't play around with it too much, but I did after kind of getting my bearings and kind of getting a little feel for the controls. Next thing I did was I hopped in and took a flight out of Sky Harbor and just kind of like flew around Phoenix for a little while and flew over. Like I did a flyby of my house, of my parents' house, of the middle school I went to growing up, of the elementary and high school that I went to growing up, and just kind of like flew over all those areas and was able to easily, catch, based on just kind of like my knowledge of the city, all of those little landmarks. Even though I was like flying in game time, it was like 10 o'clock at night or something like that. I still knew, what to look for, the street layouts and all that stuff, and basic landmarks of the city here in Scottsdale to find out all that stuff. So yeah, it was really, really cool. Just seeing how far they've come with that kind of technology and stuff. So yeah, it was a really, really surreal kind of experience. Flying over these locations that are so innately identifiable and recognizable. And again, thinking back to like Microsoft Flight Simulator 95, and it was just like, okay, here are the skyscrapers, but everything else is just like the flat terrain with like specks of quote buildings that you like are nondescript and all that stuff. Being able to them using like all the satellite data and really being able to kind of map that all out is really, really, truly something impressive. So it was a cool time hopping in and spending some time with that. So there's some kind of flight simulator thoughts for you. I very much like hope the version that eventually ends up coming to console, assuming there still is one, runs well enough, because I can, with the Xbox Series X coming here in a couple weeks, I can offload my my base Xbox One over to my dad or something, and kind of like show up one day and give him like the tutorial and say, hey, here's how to hop in and enjoy Microsoft Flight Simulator, on your big screen TV and stuff. Knock yourself out. Enjoy retirement. So yeah, we'll see how that goes. But Microsoft Flight Simulator, based on my very limited kind of time with it, real good, real, top of the line continuation of what that series is and has always been. In addition to that, I kind of, while I had the Game Pass app open, I sat there and was like, I heard really good things about Streets of Rage 4 earlier this year, and I saw that it was there on Game Pass, so I booted that up and played through that 1.5 times, basically, in one sitting. I don't have a personal connection to the Streets of Rage franchise itself, so I can't speak to kind of like what the characters are doing or what its bigger overarching story is or anything like that. But it definitely took me back to like the era of playing Double Dragon or Final Fight on the Nintendo and Super Nintendo, kind of those just side-scrolling beat 'em ups. Got me very excited to hop into Scott Pilgrim when that eventually re-releases, I believe next month. Or maybe December. So yeah, it's a fun 2D brawler. It still has a lot of the same issues that I'm like used to having in 2D brawlers, in that lining up, if a target is too far forward or behind you, and you miss, that's always like irksome and frustrating. But I got a pretty good sense, I guess, eventually where kind of those lines are drawn. And there seems to be just a butt ton of fan service in this game. As you play through the levels, based on like your time and your score and stuff, you kind of accrue like lifetime points. And once you start hitting certain like milestones of point thresholds, you start unlocking stuff. And so like I unlocked basically the main characters from Streets of Rage 1. And so you can go back and you can load in a game, or you can, play through missions or something. And instead of selecting one of your four main characters in this game and kind of the new animation style, you can go back and like pick up the, original Genesis or maybe Super Nintendo art style of those characters, the pixel art. And they have different abilities as a result. So like I played through the game as one of the female characters. I don't know the series well enough to be able to just recall the names off the top of my head, but and then I reloaded as like when I beat it through the first time, I hopped in and played the second run, or started a second run as basically like pixel version of main. Like I think of him as Cody from Final Fight, but he's not Cody. He's whatever that analog is, Axel maybe, or something like that. Anyway, Streets of Rage 4, I like very much get why fans of the series were loving it, and obviously again it has a ton of fan service in there. You can go in and see all sorts of like character gallery things and the extras, and I, like I said, I unlocked the three main characters from the original Streets of Rage. You can then start unlocking, and I think I unlocked maybe one of them, but you next start unlocking their Streets of Rage 2 avatars, and then presumably Streets of Rage 3 after that. So kind of getting to see those characters evolve over time is a cool little thing. Yeah, it was a good time. It was a good fun time. I don't know if I, have any reason to hop back into it or anything like that. But again, especially since it was on Game Pass and I'd heard great things about it, beginning of the year, way back when. I felt like, yeah, I can go check that out. It's not necessarily my cup of tea, just because I don't have that long storied history with the franchise. But the plot as it was seemed cool enough. You kind of encounter, like, I want to say it was like 10 levels or something like that, and each one kind of ends with a final boss fight, as you kind of expect in that style of beat 'em up brawlers. And I liked how kind of some of those enemies start coming back in later levels with like a new companion or something like that, a new version of that boss fight. So it kind of kept things fresh going throughout. Yeah, real good game, Streets of Rage 4 there. I don't know if it'll make its way up onto my top games of 2020 list at all, but that's just because it's not really my cup of tea, I guess, for the most part. But it was a good time. I had a good time with it. And then the last of the games that I've spent some time with here from the Microsoft Game Pass, the one I really hopped into was Age of Empires 3 Definitive Edition, because that one just recently released. And I hopped into it and was like, I don't remember how to play Age of Empires all that well, and I couldn't find a tutorial really in there. So I was like, all right, let me back out and hop into Age of Empires 1 and kind of start from the beginning, because or Age of Empires 1, 2, and 3 are all in Game Pass on PC. So I hopped back into Age of Empires, the original, and kind of started up the tutorial campaign, which is built around like ancient Egypt and stuff like that, and have just been enjoying like just casually kind of playing through that classic real-time strategy game that takes me back. I kind of got like an itch for it after PAX East this year, where I played Stronghold Warlords, which has unfortunately been delayed into 2021 at this point. But like playing that, I was like, this is fun, and it takes me back to those hours and hours upon hours that I spent playing stuff like Age of Empires, and the like there was a good time running there where just a ton of those kinds of games were coming out. The original like Warcraft games, for example. I never really got into StarCraft myself, but like another one that just absolutely like is cemented in my brain is the Lost World Jurassic Park real-time strategy game. I remember just playing that endlessly because it had, the characters would have kind of dialogue from the movie or something like that, and it was the actual actors, performing their little lines of dialogue there as you would, run them around and try and not get killed by all the dinosaurs. So yeah, lots of fun. Just kind of like revisiting, franchises from my childhood here on Microsoft Game Pass, specifically Flight Simulator and Age of Empires there. But even the Streets of Rage kind of really took me back to an era where I would play a lot more of those games because they were kind of the games of the era, like your Simpsons or your Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles or your Double Dragons or your Final Fights and all that kind of stuff. So lots of fun there, hopping into Microsoft Game Pass on my PC here in October of 2020, after I finally getting that set up. And then the last little thing I had just for this week, I wanted to give an update on Schitt's Creek, which I talked about in last week's episode, I think, with Logan. And I talked about how kind of it just wasn't a show for me, but I continued to give it more of a shot, and it took until I think last week I'd really only watched like the first season. I have continued on. I'm almost halfway through, or more than halfway through season 4 at this point of 6, I believe. It took until about the third season for me to like really reliably start enjoying the characters enough to the point where I was enjoying the show and I'm willing to kind of stick with it at this point. But a couple of friends were like, yeah, no, you should like definitely check it out. It definitely kind of like moves away from the, more hate-filled nature of maybe that first season, and really softens up there in season 2. I didn't really feel that all that much, or if I did, like it didn't pierce the threshold for me to really start enjoying it. There were like a couple moments where I started to like find myself chuckling or smiling at the characters, but it really wasn't until season 3, and specifically when the character Patrick gets introduced into the mix. And I won't go into too much detail for non fans of the show or anything like that if you're interested in watching. But once Patrick enters the mix and kind of starts influencing some of the character dynamics with some of the other characters he interacts with, I started to really buy in at that point. So yeah, I'm sticking with it at this point. It helps that the seasons are only like 13 episodes long, so I can just kind of like watch, again, either in the background or before I'm going to bed or something like that. And in a week or two, I'm almost through 4 seasons of this show, on and off. So got another 2 seasons to go, and I look forward to kind of at this point finishing up and then trying to figure out what I'm going to sit down and watch next. So yeah, that is the Schitt's Creek update there for me. And I think with that, that's going to do it for this little quick solo episode of That Nerdy Site Show. Thank you for joining me for it. Unfortunately, sorry we couldn't have other members of the team on. Just kind of things fell apart there last minute. You can follow me at Trevor J. Starkey on Twitter. I will go ahead and give a shout out to hopefully this coming week's episode of That D Plus Show is going to be focused on Halloween Town as we kind of wrap up the Halloween season here in advance of the holiday. So check that out. As well as one final plug shout out before it goes live to everybody, or because it's going to go live for everybody. But our Patreon exclusive episode this month is our epic rundown of a ton of PlayStation 4 exclusives. We kind of did our version of the bracket that Kind of Funny did, and so you can enjoy that epic 4.5 hour piece of content, currently for $1 if you support us on Patreon, but if not, it'll go live here Halloween morning, basically, as when that's going to go live for everybody. So if you can't support us, no worries, you can check it out then. And yeah, it's definitely it'll hopefully hold you over until the new consoles hit here in early November. So yeah, that's going to do it. You can follow all of us over at That Nerdy Site, or check out thatnerdysite.com for all of the latest from us. If you liked what you heard, once again, you can always please rate, review, subscribe, like, and share, and all that fun stuff. And maybe even consider supporting us on Patreon at patreon.com/thatnerdysite. Thank you for listening. As always, stay nerdy and be good to each other.